How are you doing? A lovely foggy day here in Felixstowe, and we're continuing with the life story of today's guest, young Eric. I think we've got to episode 4, and we're still in Burma. Today's progress will depend upon rate of delivery and where things take us, Eric. So, Eric, you were in Burma at the end of your... So you're coming up to demob from the Royal Air Force.
Well, no, you've gone way ahead.
Oh, right.
You see, basically, they didn't demob. It was really a question of last in, last out. And
right.
Because I had gone in at, I suppose, when 1943, 44, something.
So were you conscripted, or were you...
Oh, I was conscripted. I was called up at 18. Everybody was automatically called up at 18.
Right.
They weren't given any choice or
No.
anything like that. And I was called up, but because of my qualifications, educational qualifications,
Yes.
I went into the Met Office.
Yes.
And so, of course, there was a great demand for the Met Office. I went on a Pathfinder station,
Yes.
during the war when they were bombing Germany.
Uh-huh.
And but then when the tail end of the war, things were
In Europe.
In Europe,
Yeah.
at the tail end of it, I was shipped out to the Far East, where the war was still going on. Of course, it was still going on with Japan.
Yes.
And as I think I explained in the last issue, I was attached to the Americans, and we had these great big balloons which we sent up
the
with
weather
a transmitter underneath, giving all the weather up. And I suspect that it was to prepare for the atomic bomb. They were doing the research for the
Yes.
atomic bomb, but
Right.
we weren't told that, of
No.
course.
No.
But then the Americans pulled out of Burma, and we were left to carry on with this research work ourselves.
Right.
And so that was the Burmese side. But I was in Burma for 2.5 years, and of that,
Long
probably
time.
nearly 2 years of it was after the end of the war.
Oh, right.
You see, so
Right.
this is where it comes in. But it was very interesting because the Japanese prisoners of war, people don't realise, they then sent the Japanese prisoners of war over to us to help us.
Oh,
But-
right.
But they were all seemed very well fed and very well looked after by us. A little different, I might add,
Oh.
from the way they treated our prisoners of
No,
war.
that was poor.
Because they were brought from Japan to Burma
Yes.
and to recruit before they were sent back to England, because their health was
These
so...
were the Allies,
the Allied
prisoners
the
of
British
war,
prisoners of
which
war.
actually was many nations, wasn't it?
Yes, but I mean the bulk of the ones who came to us were Air Force and British, obviously. But I remember seeing them. We had a swimming pool, and the swimming pool was closed for our personnel, and because the disease of these prisoners was so bad, sores. I went up and saw them and watched them, covered with sores, like matchsticks they were. They must have been starved,
Oh, they were.
in dreadful condition. And I don't know whether somebody was explaining to me quite recently, in actual fact, that they said that the Japanese, if somebody was taken prisoners of war, they sort of thought badly of them.
Oh, they did, because you had failed as a human being.
Yeah, no, you should commit suicide.
Absolutely, yeah.
They had a term for it, I think.
Harikari.
Harikari, that's
Yeah.
it. So I think this might be one of the reasons why they were treated so badly, because it was contrary to their
Well,
beliefs.
it's the sort of... we won't go into the Japanese
no, but
mindset,
I mean,
because it's very difficult for us to
I
understand.
know some Japanese who are absolutely wonderful
Yeah.
people, so
But-
I mean, I can't speak highly enough of some
But
of
certainly the
Japanese.
Geneva Convention didn't seem to run
Well,
with regards to their
with the
prisoners of war.
So we had these prisoners of war coming through,
Right.
and of course it was a very trying time, because
Mm.
when you saw that, and but life went on out there. We had our duties and what have you.
But the Burmese at this time were looking to gain or have national independence.
Yes.
Going by Samsung, her father was a
Yes.
big sort of
But you
military
see,
who wanted to become independent.
people get very confused. They
Mm.
think that we should apply our standards to a different culture.
And we shouldn't.
And you see, the culture in Burma is
Mm.
quite different to the culture in Europe or in England.
Right.
And obviously, Burma used to be a British colony.
Yes, indeed.
Part of Britain. Then the Japanese invaded, took it over, and then when the British came back,
there was a problem.
Obviously, no, there was no problem. All the Burmese, it's lovely to have the British back. This is on the surface. I learned Burmese, and I had a lot of Burmese friends, and they talked to me, obviously, and they said we much preferred it under the Japanese.
Why?
They preferred it under the Japanese because there was no crime at all. You could leave all your buildings unlocked, nothing was ever stolen.
Right.
And with the British back, literally in the evening you'd hear gunfire where people were holding up households, this is Burmese households, and robbing them. If you had a jeep or something and you left it outside a shop without somebody in it, you'd come out and you'd find the four wheels gone. Sometimes even the engine gone.
So what did the Japanese do that was so different?
What the Japanese did was very clever. If they found anybody stealing anything, they cut off their heads, put them on a stake, and stuck it outside the village.
For those of a nervous disposition, we will take this piece.
Oh no!
We won't.
I think this is going out live, so we must keep it. I think it's just a question of showing the difference of the different cultures.
Oh, it is.
So this meant that culture needed a very strong hand. You see, poverty, when somebody hasn't got anything at all, it doesn't matter what they do because they've got nothing to lose.
Absolutely.
And so unless there's something rigid, and I mean, I'm not defending Saddam Hussein, you know who I mean.
Her father?
No,
the general.
In Iraq.
Saddam
Hussein. Oh. But you see, he had a very strong hold, and this is why 300,000 people have died there, because it's a different culture. They need different handling. And you see, I went back to Burma on I think it was our 50th wedding anniversary.
Right.
I took my wife, I wanted her to see Burma, and nothing had changed. It was all exactly the same.
Oh, right.
The poverty and the military ruled it with a rod of iron.
Indeed they did.
We hired a little, little coach thing to run us around with a guide.
I think we did cover this.
Have we covered this?
Yes, we did.
Yes, oh well then we've covered it.
We have. So if we could move on to when you're getting ready to depart Burma.
Oh, yes.
I mean, what were your sort of final acts, final things to do? What was the biggest impression Burma made upon you as a very impressionable 21, 22-year-old?
20-year-old,
21-year-old. I mean, what an experience in life.
Oh, it was.
I mean, now they're not even starting to work. They might be going to uni, but in the main, they've had very few life experience. They've not been bombed, pushed from pillar to post in a seminary. The Air Force then carried that on in its own inevitable way, and then there you are in Burma at 20. Onward.
No, but basically Burma, it impressed me because it's a very spiritual country. I got to know the Buddhists, the Buddhist priests. As you know, they only have, I think it's 2 or 3 possessions. They can only have their sandals, their yellow robes, and a begging bowl. There are only 3 possessions they're allowed to have. But I had long talks with them, and of course they believe that we can actually leave our bodies, and if you can clear your mind completely of everything, you can depart from your body. But if you try to clear your mind, you try it.
It's very hard.
It's very difficult. The moment you try to get your mind completely blank.
I think in the 60s, a lot of our young folk thought they could do that chemically. But we won't go there. We won't go there.
But the whole point was they thought that if you did that, you were able to leave your body and go elsewhere, and an amazing experience. But they said it took them virtually a lifetime to learn the technique of clearing the mind.
So that's the highest level of achievement.
And also I found things which I couldn't understand. Say, for instance, I had a lot of Burmese friends, and they had this all day long. They put coal and wood burning, a long area, about, I should think, 30, 40 meters.
Oh, right.
Absolutely burning. And I went close up to it. They had a barrier, for the crowds there, and I could could hardly bear the heat from the barrier. This is when it had all gone down red hot.
Oh, what, the walking?
And,
Yes.
and they got all these people getting themselves into this trance and what have you, and then they literally walked across this red hot cold.
I know.
And there was no trickery, there was no faking. I could feel the heat myself.
Yes.
There was no way it could have done. Now how that took place, I just don't know.
So you didn't have a go at it? I just wondered.
I thought I was going far enough, getting up to the barrier so that I could see it.
So firewalking obviously had a big impression.
Well, this is
the
the
spiritual,
big thing. And the
spiritual
spiritual
beliefs
side
of the.
and their beliefs.
Yeah.
And you see, when you have nothing, you've got to have some spiritual beliefs.
Absolutely.
And but the different things which you don't realise. You see, these villages, everything was on stilts.
Yes.
And the toilets, for instance, they used to go up a tree. They'd find a tree which had a branch
Yes.
going down low, like
Right.
this over the swamp,
Right.
and they'd pick a different tree each time
And spread it around.
and spread it around, and
Yeah.
they'd go up on the tree and spend their business.
So really, that
up a
was
tree.
sort of night soil distribution without mechanical ends.
Absolutely.
So
But-
going on from the night soil, I didn't know why we ended up in the toilet in Burma, because we certainly shouldn't have done. But looking at,
But they've got a lovely temperament.
yes,
the
I
Burmese
know
people.
some Burmese people,
lovely
and they are, and perhaps that's contributes to the fact that 60 years or more, they've had supposed self-determination and whatever, and they seem to be less free now than they did when you were there.
But you see,
But now
Matt,
that's starting to
Matt,
move.
You've just
It's
given,
starting
you've
to
just
move.
given me a little memory, which I
Right.
think should be remembered now by everybody.
Right.
Because they had a parliament. The English, when they came back in, they reinstated a parliament.
Oh, right.
So you had the government in effect, and
Yes.
you had the opposition. Now,
Right.
just to show you difference in culture,
Yes.
one happy day, this is while I was in Burma,
Yeah.
they had a parliamentary meeting, you know, what
Yes.
have you, and a gunman with a machine gun went into the parliament
Right.
and he shot down the whole of the government bench.
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding, they killed about 12 or 14 people, injured I don't know how many more, and then, of course, they chased him, obviously, this gun, he
Yeah.
ran off,
Yeah.
and this is really interesting point, they followed him, and do you know where he went?
No.
He was found hiding underneath the house of the leader of the opposition.
How appalling.
So that shows you the type of politics of a different culture. Because can you imagine somebody going to Westminster with a machine gun and mowing down the
Yeah, I can.
opposition?
I
Can
can.
you? I see.
Well,
that's good.
oddly,
I couldn't.
I was on duty, God knows, in some part of the world, and I was listening to BBC World Service when that Spanish colonel
Oh yes,
broke into the Spanish Parliament,
yes.
and they were fully armed. And if you remember, he had a machine gun and he fired it into the roof.
See,
So
because
it can happen
this
in
is
Europe.
different because
I
it's-
realise that,
but-
but well, you know, madmen everywhere,
Yes.
aren't there?
But then
but
one of the things I admired about the Burmese, they had lovely natures
Yes.
and very generous and very, you know, they shared everything and they were good. But of course the pagodas were absolutely incredible.
Yes, I mean,
And everybody put any money they had into gold.
like India.
And yes, I suppose so. But the Swedagon pagoda, for instance, the whole of that pagoda is got gold leaf over the whole of the sides.
Yeah.
But then, of course, when we were, how shall I say, shipped home,
Yes.
we were put onto a vessel leaving from Rangoon. It's called Myanmar or something. now.
Yes,
But,
right.
but it was Rangoon in those days. And I remember steaming out, looking across from the ship, and
Yes.
seeing all these pagodas all over the place.
Beautiful.
Very religious, this was the thing.
Yeah.
So they had to have something.
Just as an aside, and I don't want to distract you, but I read in one of the heavies a couple of Sundays ago that Rangoon has some of the best examples of colonial build in the world.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
because of the lack of development over the last 60 years, they are still there. Whereas
Yes.
if you go to Singapore or
Yes,
wherever,
yes.
the whole area, or you go to the Gulf now,
Yeah.
they've destroyed their
Yeah,
architectural
yeah,
history,
yeah,
sadly. And
Yeah.
there is a movement afoot trying to keep the best of those. A bit
Yes.
like the Raffles Hotel in
Yes,
Singapore.
yes.
Those type of iconic buildings.
But you're taking my train.
Which are a bit of the history.
You're taking my
Yes.
thought train away.
No, you're away.
At 87, I have to go straight, unfortunately.
But you're on a boat.
I'm on a boat.
You're on a boat leaving
Burma. And from there we went over to Singapore. And we
right.
stayed perhaps, I think, 3 or 4 weeks.
Really?
But Singapore then, it must have been heavily bombed. And it was like a shanty town.
Really?
All these sort of straw, like straw huts
Yeah.
and whatsits and bazaars everywhere.
We used to call them barastis in Abu Dhabi.
And when I red light districts and the troops, which seemed to be an attraction for the troops, and this is the absurdity of it. In the red light district, there
Yes.
used to be a troop post
Yes.
where they distributed condoms
Well,
to the troops.
And you need
Which shows what a nonsense it all was, really,
Right.
because, I mean, it was a prohibited area for the troops,
Yes.
and yet they had a thing inside catering for the troops.
That sounds like a British compromise.
I think it must be.
You know, health betters military discipline.
Absolutely. But anyway, I was there for three weeks or so.
Right.
And what was interesting, as I say, when we went round the world on our 50th wedding anniversary, we went to Singapore, and I said,
Right.
"Oh, I'll show you all the bazaars," to my wife. And of course we went, skyscrapers, huge modern buildings, and I said to them, "Where are the bazaars?" They said, "Oh, we're just about to build one for the tourists." So I thought that was really...
So they'd lost everything, then, really.
They modernised the town to such an extent that they hadn't even got a bazaar left, an old-fashioned bazaar.
No.
And they were building one especially for the tourists.
Yeah, I went back to Dubai and it was the same.
Same
They,
sort of
they've
thing,
lost
yes.
an awful
Yes,
lot.
yes.
They've gained a lot, but
They
they've
do,
lost
but
a
they
lot.
lose a lot.
Yeah.
But anyway, so basically we went to Singapore, stayed there for 3 weeks, and then we flew from Singapore to what used to be called Ceylon, which is now
Oh, yes. Sri Lanka. Right.
where we stayed for a few days.
Uh-huh.
So I had a chance to see a bit of the
You
world
did,
on the
didn't
way
you?
back.
And you're still, what, 2021?
Something like that.
Yeah, magic.
And then, of course, I came from Ceylon, flew back to England, where
Right.
we went into a transit or a demob camp,
Yes.
where we were demobbed, we were given our suit, you know.
You had your suit.
I had my suit.
So what selection did they have? Because, I mean, you're not the tallest of people. So one would
Well,
assume...
you just went and there's a big counter,
Right.
and virtually they looked at you and gave it. You didn't even try it on.
Really?
They just handed it out to you.
So was it Weaver to Weave, Hepworth's? Who was the tailor?
I didn't.
That's
who
it.
knows? Who knows?
They just
That's
gave you this suit.
I don't think I ever wore it. But,
Did you not?
But there you are. That's one of the. That's,
See, I keep seeing photos of demob folk
yes.
with this ill-fitting suit, and a lot of them have the old trilby hat. Now you
No,
say you never got a hat.
I didn't got a hat. Didn't get a hat.
Oh, yeah, you were
But then-
shortchanged.
No. The reason for that is that in those days every man wore a hat.
Yes, they did.
And so if you see a man in his demob suit, he'd be wearing a hat just as a matter of course.
To be complete.
It wasn't a question that he got that as part of his demob outfit.
Oh, well, then he was shortchanged.
So, but at any rate, coming back to the story, I mean, you've got to think of the different values that in those days. I think I was saying a few minutes ago, the average money that a other ranks got was 75p a week, 15 shillings a week.
Really,
So,
right.
so you know, there was a different sense of values.
Yeah.
Everything costs was so different. The average wage was £3 a week.
Yes.
You could go and get fish and chips for 6pence, which is 2.5p.
Today's P.
Today's money.
Yeah.
You can get a bag of chips for a penny, which is a fraction of one of our present pennies.
Yes.
And you know, people don't realise the difference in values. But I think people were perhaps they didn't demand so much, but I think they were a lot happier in some ways
I think you're right.
because
In my village, fundamentally, there wasn't a lot, but everybody sort of shared that wasn't a lot. So
Well-
the envy quotant, the keeping up with the Jones, didn't really apply.
Well, this
you
is
know,
right.
to that degree, that sort of came
So
in.
at any
much
rate,
later.
I came back to England and demobbed, and of course I went home to my loving parents,
Right.
and my lovely sister. I went to see my lovely sister this last weekend. in
Oh,
actual
lovely.
fact.
Eastbourne.
She to celebrate her 90th birthday.
How glorious.
And of course she'd been in the Wrens,
Had she?
so she came out of the Wrens,
All right.
and it was a very happy time. But of course, I went through a period of depression because I'd had malaria in Burma.
Yeah.
When I came back, of course, they weren't able to treat it. They didn't know how to treat malaria, and I went into hospital for I don't know how long, 2 or 3 months to get rid of this malaria.
Yes.
And so it wasn't the happiest of time, but it was a very happy time because when I first came out, I walked along Balham High Road.
As you do.
As you do, and I
Yes.
thought, well, I'm going to go dancing before during the
Oh, right. Yes.
I used to like dancing, and I thought I'd go in and dance. And I saw this first floor dance hall opposite Duquesne Court, and I thought I'd go in there.
Oh, right.
And of course I went in there, and I thought, well, dancing must have changed. Because what I hadn't realised was that it was an old-time dancing,
Oh, was
and
it?
not modern dancing.
Oh, right.
But there were 2 very attractive girls there, and they sort of took pity on me and mothered me and what's it.
Right.
And I'm pleased to say that one of those is
Now.
my present wife, has been for 64 years.
Brilliant.
So I must have done something.
And that
right
was
then.
Balham High Street,
Balham High Street,
gateway to the south.
gateway to the south.
You-
Now I don't know how.
No,
time
we're
is
okay.
going.
We're okay.
We're all right
So,
for time.
you came back. You had a period of tropical illness, and there was an awful lot around, wasn't there? And
Well, this is
certainly, the NHS had great difficulty in treating it.
That's
I know a
right.
number of folk in
But
my
of
village.
course, one of the things which they gave to all the troops coming out was the means, if they wanted to go to university or to take a study
Did they?
course.
Oh, right.
So I thought, well, I may as well take advantage
Too right.
of this.
Yes.
And so I went to London University, LSE.
Uh-huh.
But unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know which, I was guided by my sister, who
Yes.
suggested I took very ordinary subjects, English, French, or
All right.
maths, which I shouldn't have done. I should have gone for
Yeah,
law,
yeah.
which I did later on.
Uh-huh.
But the result was that I wasn't really very interested in it.
Right.
And I started up because I'd established, I think I mentioned last time, with this man, D. Maurice,
Yes.
a business.
Yes,
so
you
I
said.
started doing this business with Burma. And
right.
so I trotted round and I got the sole agencies for Tintex dyes,
Oh, right.
which was big in those
Oh, yes.
days.
Yeah.
Sobel radios.
Oh,
I went
yes.
for all the big people.
Yeah.
We got the sole agency for Burma for these, and we
Did you
started
really?
shipping the goods out.
Brilliant.
And of course, it brought the money in.
Oh, yes.
My wife came and worked for me as my secretary.
Did she really?
So she's still trying to sort me out after all these years.
But she's not given up yet.
Well, you know, she's got heart problems at the
No,
moment.
no, I meant, on one day reforming you and keeping you running in the straight and narrow.
Well, I think she gave up a long time
I thought you
ago,
might have done.
yes.
After 64 years, that's quite remarkable.
But
So,
also, of course, this was another interesting thing. There was a great shortage of building materials and things to build houses.
Indeed there was,
And of course,
huge.
because of all the bombing,
yes,
and the shortage of what they call reinforcing rods.
yes,
And so I discovered that you could buy they used to come in big rolls, and they used to have different diameters, inch down to 1/4 of an inch. So you could get a 3/4 inch reinforcing rod, which is a very big thing.
yes.
And we found a very old machine which straightened these rolls out. It sort of like the grab went like that, and it pulled them like this,
Magic.
and made them straight.
So-
And then we cut them off to the right lengths. So
There they are.
and so this was a very profitable, very exciting business. I did it in partnership with Malcolm, who was Malcolm Ferguson, and he had a young man. He'd been a colonel in Africa or something,
Right.
and he had a young man. Of course, to show our innocence, I realise now that they were a gay couple
Oh, were they?
living together, but
Oh,
in those
right.
days it didn't even occur to
Well,
you.
no,
you
it
know.
didn't, because it was high risk, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
well, it
suppose
was a criminal act.
I suppose it was.
Which is unbelievable.
But it just didn't occur to
Did
me.
it not?
No.
Oh, right.
But so we did so well that my wife and I, or she wasn't my wife then, we thought, well, we'll get married.
Love it.
And it was my money which was running the business,
Right.
obviously. And so we said, well, Malcolm was my best man for the wedding. And we went off. I left him with a whole mountain of signed cheques. So I said, while we were on our honeymoon. And while we were on our honeymoon, he phoned me up. He said, have you got enough money, Eric, for what you want? I said, yes, I'm all right for money. Of course, I came away all right. He said, oh, that's good. And of course, when I got back, I realised why he'd said that.
Cleared you out.
He'd cleared out the whole account to settle his own debts, nothing to do with that me.
Right.
And of course, it ruined the business. So there was I with the this very profitable business. We were running it. There used to be big arches under at Camden Town.
Oh yes.
The railway.
Yeah.
And we were doing it from there.
Really.
And unfortunately, it killed the business, which was a great
So
shame.
no criminal proceedings, or?
Oh no, I didn't believe in that.
No.
I still don't believe in that. He was the one who suffered by it. Basically, he's got it on his conscience, and but it taught me a lesson. I've never signed a signed blank check again because of that, and I don't believe in going into a partnership, because apparently if you're in a partnership, you're responsible for that. So although I could have got him for
though you've been in a very long partnership.
Oh, I've been in 64 years.
Exactly, and that's the best partnership you've had.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure that what you say about not believing in partnerships is totally true. You're a commercial partnership. Commercial
partnership.
Okay, well, there's no hope for me then, Eric, on that basis.
How long have you been married?
30. We're compared to 64.
Yeah,
it seems a long time.
You're still a young man. I've got children your age, so.
I'm sure you're probably older, but we won't go there either. Yeah. So you'd gone back to Tootenbeck. Obviously, your father and family he was back on.
He was
doing his music again. You set up this business, and you were defrauded by your partner. So there you are, with minutes left of this episode. What were you then going to do?
Well, this is where,
because you were now married with family responsibilities.
Yes, absolutely. So I thought, well, the best thing I can do is to go and get a job.
Right.
So it struck me as being a sensible
sounds good
thing.
Idea. I know doing lots of jobs.
I remember going up to Balham Library, because I couldn't afford to go out and buy newspapers and what have you. And in those days, they used to have these big racks with all the papers on it, so you could walk through and read all the papers, and people did it.
Yes, they did. They still do, Eric, actually.
Do they? Oh,
yes,
that's
and still at Balham.
I'm pleased, do they? Oh, that's
building's still there.
Is it very good?
Yeah.
But at any rate, so I looked at these, and I saw an advert there. It said space salesman. So I thought, well, what on earth is a space salesman?
Yeah.
So I didn't know what a space salesman was even. So I rang up and had the appointment in Victoria, and I went and saw the man, and I don't know why I did this, but he said, do you know, I thought, that's fine, space selling's no problem at all. Well, I wasn't telling a fib, because space selling wouldn't be a problem to somebody who knew about it.
Absolutely.
But I said space selling is no problem at all.
So I take it this was newspaper space?
No, it was a thing in factories.
Oh, yes.
Showing holiday accommodation.
Right.
So he said, no, all you've got to do is to go and sell these spaces, and he said, you go down to Margate at your own expense, needless to say.
Absolutely.
And so I went down to Margate, and I knocked on the hotel doors, and fortunately I sold a tremendous. I didn't know what I was doing.
But you did it well.
I sold about 10 of these spaces. And so when I came back,
yes,
he was delighted.
I bet he
was.
was.
The moon, you know, he couldn't believe it.
So this was in timeshare, but something, because I'm not quite sure what we...
They made arrangement with some big factory.
Yes,
they put this big poster up showing all the hotels who'd advertised, so people would go to those hotels to stay.
Oh, right.
You see, and
sort of promotional.
I found out afterwards that the average person went out, and they were lucky if they sold 2 or 3 in a week. Right. I sold 10 in a day.
I love it.
So,
so what we've discovered in this episode is you're a natural salesman.
Well, I suppose that's right. Yes.
I think we're going to. Sorry, folks, we're running out of time. It is Friday. It is foggy. It is Felixstowe, but we will be back again to progress with This Is Your Life with young Eric.
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Eric.
Good,
That's
thanks,
great.
Mike.
Thank you.